Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. The crisis that we now find ourselves in is a human tragedy. It's an economic calamity, but there's also a singular national humiliation. We're living through a moment where the U.S. is a laughingstock or the subject of pity around the world. Look at this chart of daily new confirmed coronavirus cases. The European Union, along with countries like Indonesia, Japan, Australia, they have all gotten their cases down. Some are at or near zero. And then there is that dark line going right up. That is us. Our cases are skyrocketing. Our government's response is a failure. We are living in this tragedy, this national humiliation for all to see. We keep setting records for new cases in a day. 5 times in the last 8 days, we've set a new record for cases. And yesterday, another record, the U.S. reporting 50,000 new cases in a single day. Only one other country in the world of any size has ever reported more than 50,000 cases in a day, and that is Brazil. It's the U.S. and Brazil, that's it. Now, the first time around, back in March, when the virus first hit, it was bad. And both the Trump administration primarily and some local leaders reacted poorly. But it was also the case that so many other countries were getting hit hard, too. I mean, Italy was one of the worst hit countries with the virus just overwhelming hospitals. It looked like the situation was completely out of control there. They imposed a national lockdown for over 2 months, but Italy's come out on the other side, at least for now, with less than 200 new cases a day. They did what they had to do, and now life is getting back to some semblance of normal, kind of life before the pandemic. And it's not just Italy. We are seeing scenes of societies emerging from the pandemic all over the world. In Denmark, high school students just celebrated the end of school. And not virtual school, they have physically been in classes, in person. They have the amusement parks open there as well, which this girl appears to be quite happy about. In Ireland, they have bars back open, along with some movie theaters, museums, and all sorts of other things. In New Zealand, where they have almost 0 cases, they are back to playing rugby. In Japan, the malls of Tokyo are open, and the streets are as crowded as the streets of New York City once were, the only difference being that everyone is wearing masks. In the Czech Republic, they just had a huge party in Prague to celebrate the easing of coronavirus restrictions. A massive public dinner on the Charles Bridge with no social distancing required.
Things are going more easy now, I think, about COVID-19, and so just to enjoy life.
Just enjoy life. We've gotten rid of COVID. Sure looks nice. For some perspective here, consider this. Florida just announced more than 10,000 cases in a single day. By contrast, as writer Matt O'Brien pointed out, with a combined population of 2.6 billion people, China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the Philippines, Australia, and the entire European Union are averaging 6,760 new cases a day. Less than Florida. All those countries, with a population of 2.6 billion people collectively, they have fewer cases than just Florida, and that is just one state. In Alabama, the number of patients being treated for coronavirus surged past 800 for the first time ever today, marking the 4th straight day that they have set record highs for hospitalizations. In Texas, they hit another record-breaking day for cases and hospitalizations. The governor just finally issued a statewide mask ordinance requiring most people to wear masks in public after long resisting that kind of policy. In California, the number of people hospitalized with the coronavirus has jumped 56% in the last 2 weeks. We are on an island here in the United States. No other country is struggling with the virus like we are, in the way we are at this point in the arc of it. It is a global failure, as the Biden campaign points out in this new ad.
You are going to be so proud of your country. We're going to win so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
The president has this metaphor he likes to use. It's something that someone must have said to him at some point in some meeting he was half listening to, and it got buried in his brain. It's to talk about the virus like a dying fire. Quote, we may have some embers or some ashes, or we may have some flames coming, but we'll put them out. We'll stomp them out. It's not a wrong metaphor, actually. It's a pretty good one. The idea is that you can suppress the virus enough, then you can just take care of the embers. And that's actually accurate. That is exactly what all those other countries have done. They have suppressed it enough so they essentially have firefighters running around the country, extinguishing each ember as it appears and stopping the country from catching fire, stopping the virus from spreading. But that is not us. No, we are way past the ember state. The country is on fire. It is in flames. We cannot stomp it out. And the rest of the world is looking on in horror. Joining me now, Laurie Garrett, Pulitzer Prize-winning science journalist who's been following the surging cases across the country and the pandemic from the beginning across the world. Is it fair, as someone who has been reporting on this from its first appearance in Wuhan and Hubei province in China, to say that this has been a disaster, a global disaster in the context of other countries?
This is a national humiliation in terms of the rest of the world. Look, Chris, the one that blows my mind is Canada. A new survey of public opinion in Canada finds that only the highest percentage of Canadians willing to allow Americans to come to Canada right now is 24% of Quebecois. But out in British Columbia, only 6% of the citizens would allow Americans to come across the border as long as this COVID situation is out of control. Canada wants that border kept tight shut. No Americans allowed. If you look around the world, the sense of disappointment is so painful to see. I was reading some newspapers in South Africa where they were writing, once you were our beacon, you were what we wanted to emulate. We wanted to be America, and now all we can see is total American failure. We cannot believe it. You see essays like this in every single language around the world, in newspapers, in magazines, and in broadcasting. It's just a sense of, oh my gosh, how did America fail this deeply? How could this be? The leader of science, the leader of democracy, the leader of the free world, and the number one economy. And it's the number one complete failure when it comes to this pandemic. It's astonishing. And then we add salt to the wound when we say to the rest of the world, oh, by the way, we're not going to play nice in the sandbox either, because we're going to turn around and buy the entire supply of Gilead Remdesivir, the only drug out there that's been recently shown to be effective in reducing the length of time of illness other than dexamethasone. And we're going to buy it all up so the rest of the world can't get any. And to the rest of the world, this is viewed as, once again, America saying, it's us versus all of you. We do what we want. Yeah. We're going to take the vaccine first. We're going to take the drugs first. To heck with the rest of you.
In identifying the difference, I mean, it seems to me the sort of most clear-cut problem when you look at us and other countries that had bad outbreaks, right? So there's a whole category of countries that sort of avoided terrible outbreaks to begin with, which is great. That's what you want to do, right? But then there's the countries that had really bad outbreaks, and that's Italy, and that's Spain, and that's France. It seems to me the key difference is those countries basically kept things locked down long enough to get down to a possible suppression level to then do the kind of putting out the embers strategy that we never did. Like, we never really actually got it under control in a way that would allow that. And so when we opened back up, it was inevitable we would have this.
Well, we didn't get it under control in the way that you're describing nationally, but New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, key states Northeast did, and made the proper sacrifices and got their epidemics under control. I think really, Chris, there's two key things. One, it's obviously your national leadership question, but it's also that every single European country you named has a national health system. And that means that they have always centralized data, centralized purchasing, centralized policy, so that it would be easy in Paris for Macron to turn to his health minister and say, what do you think we should do? And the health minister puts some scientists together and says, here's what we should do. And boom, it happens for the whole country. Here we have a completely fragmented response. I mean, just today, Representative Andy Biggs in Arizona called upon the White House to shut down the coronavirus task force and get rid of Tony Fauci and Deborah Birx. And you had, meanwhile, Andrew Cuomo saying, we've done a great job, but we're not going to allow the following states, big long list, to send any of their people our way because they have too much COVID. We're acting more like 50, and if we should include Guam and Puerto Rico and so on, so 50 plus individual nations than we are like a single national response.
The only sort of moonshot here, as far as I can tell, is like a very fast 100% mask adoption. The data that's accrued over the last several months has really suggested that in terms of like effectiveness versus cost and hassle, it's the sort of easiest thing we have. You have Abbott today issuing a mask order for any county in the state that has over 20 cases, which is basically the entire state. You've got this tweet from the South Carolina governor, Henry McMaster. Let me make it very clear. Wear a mask and social distance now so we can enjoy high school and college football in South Carolina this fall, which is sort of perverse at one level because there's other things that are even more important than that, but also maybe good for the target audience. I guess my question to you is like, can we do it short of massive interventions? Is everyone masks up? If everyone gets on the same page, can we arrest the growth we're seeing now?
Well, look at it this way. The choice, mask or not to mask, is being described as if it were an economic choice, as if somehow by wearing a mask, you were opposing the opening of the economy and you were somehow, in favor of a lockdown. And that if you didn't wear a mask, you were somehow gung-ho for the economy. But Goldman Sachs just released a report that says, actually, we could save 5% of our GDP loss. I mean, enormous, trillions of dollars to the U.S. economy, and that means a lot of jobs, if every single person, when they left their home, was wearing a mask at all times. That's a very simple intervention. It's cheap. Anybody can do it. It requires no skills whatsoever. Just put the mask on so that it covers your nose and your mouth, and you're set to go.
Let's do it, America. All right, Lori Garrett, as always, it's great to talk to you on this topic, and thank you for making a little time.